Revenge films.
My name is Ashley Williams. I just got married to my husband, Thomas Williams, and I was working part-time while also doing my best to take care of everything in the house. However, when I got married to Thomas, I started living with his mother, and things were not going well with my mother-in-law at all. Any time that I did anything, she would always compare me to a girl named Nancy, who was Thomas's childhood friend. "Wow, this is terrible. Nancy was able to make something like this easily. You really are so bad at cooking. Nancy was always able to make anything. Her cookies were the best." And she would always say things like this to me. I suppose it isn't rare for people to not get along with their mother-in-law, although my mother-in-law was always taking it too far. Perhaps it wasn't such a rare thing. That's what I thought, so I had been tolerating it all this time. But it wasn't like my mother-in-law behaved like this from the very beginning. When I first met her, we got along fine, and when she came to talk to us about living together with us, my mother-in-law put her head down. After losing her husband, she put on the act of being a sad, lonely, elderly woman, and then she said things like this: "I promise I won't get in your way," or "You can use all of the money that I got from selling the family house for the living expenses." That's what she said before she moved in. However, as soon as we started living together, she didn't put a single penny towards the expenses, not even for her own food. Our family was no longer able to get by on my husband's low salary, so I was working long hours at my part-time job to somehow make ends meet. My mother-in-law was always complaining and harassing me, but when I thought about the fact that I was paying for all of her food and expenses as well, to be honest, it was irritating. On top of that, my mother-in-law was telling all of the neighbors, "The only reason why that daughter-in-law wanted to live together with me is probably because she's just after my inheritance." And she was saying these awful things about me throughout the community. But what inheritance to be after when my mother-in-law wasn't even paying for her own food expenses? It was true that my mother-in-law had money from selling the family house, but it was crystal clear to me that she had no intention of handing over even a tiny portion of that. But if the only problem was my cheap, outspoken mother-in-law, then maybe I would have been able to tolerate this newlywed life. However, in reality, there was actually another problem, and that was with my husband. My husband Thomas was actually having an affair with that childhood friend named Nancy. When I realized the situation, I went straight to a detective agency, and I gathered evidence of the affair. I didn't say anything until I had all the preparations complete, and then I asked for a family meeting. But then this family meeting between my husband and my mother-in-law took a big turn of events from what I had expected. When I confronted Thomas, my mother-in-law yelled, "Stop it! Don't do that! Stop trying to come after Thomas like that!" My mother-in-law defended my husband, but it was her son after all, so I tried to understand that she was just trying to be a mother and protect her son. But my mother-in-law had completely lost her mind already. "You don't understand! Thomas and Nancy are in love with each other!" She was speaking as though my husband and I didn't love each other, like we didn't get married to each other and exchange our vows at the altar. "And if Thomas can be together with Nancy, that's how Thomas is going to be happy!" To my shock, my mother-in-law had known about Thomas's affair with this girl named Nancy, and they had formed a team so that Thomas could go and cheat on me as much as he wanted with Nancy. It was a tremendous betrayal by the both of them. Even though I've been working long hours at my job to support this family, I can't believe that that's what he was doing behind my back. I'm not going to let him get away with this. No matter how hard I was working and doing my best to make ends meet, I knew that this family was never going to be comfortable financially. And that's because Thomas was having his affair and spending his money recklessly on his mistress. I'm definitely going to get a divorce. I was furious, and I was just about to throw out the word divorce and make the final move, but at that very moment, my mother-in-law raised her voice. "So, Ashley, you need to get a divorce from Thomas so that he can be happy." Huh? My eyes opened wide because my mother-in-law just stole the words right out of my mouth. "I understand how you feel, that you don't want to get a divorce from such a wonderful husband like Thomas." "No, you don't understand at all. That's definitely not how I feel." That's what I wanted to say, but I was too shocked at my mother-in-law's words.
Thomas is going to be getting married to Nancy and they're going to live happily ever after. So you need to get a divorce from them. And you can take a settlement fee of $30,000. No, I'll give you an extra $10,000. I'll pay you $40,000 to divorce Thomas.
When I had first made the request to the detective agency, I had also looked up the average settlement fee in the event of a divorce due to an extramarital affair. And this amount that my mother-in-law was presenting was actually pretty high for the average divorce. What? Seriously? Are you sure? Well, yes, lucky me. That's great. $40,000 it is. Settled. I was trying to bring up the topic of divorce, but then my mother-in-law did it for me instead. And not only that, but she was offering it at a much higher amount than I had actually expected. And then my mother-in-law said, "I will pay you that settlement fee with what I have from selling the family house. There you go." And my husband, knowing that he wouldn't have to pay a settlement fee out of his own money, quickly agreed to the arrangement. To be honest, I thought that I was really going to have to fight for the divorce. Knowing my husband's reckless spending habits and how cheap my mother-in-law was, I was even prepared to go to divorce court over this. So this truly was a lucky turn of events. And so both of us filled out the divorce papers, and our divorce immediately went through. The day that I was moving out of the apartment, my ex-mother-in-law tried to bully me one last time.
They say that there are some things that money can't buy in this world, but you know what? The world is actually all about money. I mean, look, just like that, I can buy happiness with money. Happiness for me, Thomas, and Nancy.
My mother-in-law grinned at me like she had just done, and then she said,
"Goodbye forever. You better not follow Thomas around, and you better not come back to this house ever again, because Nancy is moving in this evening, and I'm sure that if she had to see the ex-wife's face, that's going to put her in a bad mood, so don't ever show up here ever again."
But she didn't have to tell me twice. I didn't have any intention of ever coming back to this apartment in my life. When I was leaving, my ex-husband didn't even show up to send me out. Seriously, I feel so relieved. Well then, when I got back to my family house, I got straight to work. Of course, I went after the mistress Nancy for a settlement fee for the extramarital affair. I thought $40,000 might be difficult, so I went for $30,000. But then the next day I received a phone call from my ex-mother-in-law.
"You witch! I didn't think that you were going to go out of your way to collect a settlement fee from Nancy! You devil! Is that how badly you want money?"
The way that she was speaking to me was awful, but knowing my ex-mother-in-law's personality, I had already expected that she was going to come at me with this kind of attitude, so I was able to remain calm and reply. I'm only fulfilling my right as the person who was cheated on in the marriage. And if she's not going to pay, then I am happy to take this wherever it needs to go. Because I know with 100% confidence that I can win this case.
Ugh!
My mother-in-law swallowed her words, and then she started yelling.
"Huh! Whatever, I'll still have money anyway, so fine, I'll pay Nancy's settlement fee for her."
As it turns out, she seemed to think that she would be able to get Nancy and her family just by paying $30,000. And then my ex-mother-in-law hung up on me, but I actually couldn't stop laughing. Ah, just as I thought. That old grandma doesn't know about that one little piece of truth. I guess she didn't know that Nancy is actually... And then, not even 1 month later, my ex-mother-in-law called me once again, but this time she was crying on the phone.
"Please, Ashley, you have to help us. I didn't know. I never imagined that Nancy was..."
Oh, you're just now realizing it? That Nancy is actually married? That's right, Nancy was actually married. She was a wife with a husband. This Nancy that my ex-mother-in-law was so obsessed with had been lying to Thomas and his mother all along, telling them that she wasn't married. However, I had realized this when I was collecting evidence from their affair, and the detective agency showed me evidence that Nancy was married.
And then Nancy's husband is suing Thomas and Nancy and trying to collect a settlement fee for $30,000 each from both of them.
Is that so? Well, that's his right to do so.
Why are you replying so calmly? Do you realize that we handed you $70,000 and now that's $60,000 on top of that?
My mother-in-law was panicking, but I maintained my composure and said, "Well then, why don't you have Nancy pay that back?"
"Nancy's been a full-time housewife all this time. There's no way she would be able to pay that back."
"Well then, have Thomas pay."
"That's impossible, that idiot's son. Even though this is the situation that we're in, on his way home from work, he still continues to move around, and he won't stop going to the bars either. I don't know what to do."
Perhaps she finally realized that her son was an idiot that had a terrible spending habit and had no clue how to save money. My ex-mother-in-law was still saying something on the other end of the phone, but I interrupted her and said, "I'm busy, so I'm going to hang up now. I don't have any responsibility nor desire to listen to the problems of a complete stranger." And I hung up. After that, she continued to call me over and over again, but I ignored every single call. But then, to my disbelief, my mother-in-law came barging into my parents' house. As it turns out, by ignoring all of her phone calls, I ignited even more of a fire inside of my ex-mother-in-law.
"You thief! You witch! You better give me back that $70,000. That's my money, so you give it back to me!"
She was yelling in front of the front door to my parents' house, but I answered at the door, and once again I replied calmly, "Can you please be quiet? If not, I'm going to have to call the police on you. If you're going to be slandering me like that so loudly in this neighborhood." When I hit her with that logic, my ex-mother-in-law completely flipped a switch. This time she dropped down to her knees and tried to put on a sweet voice. She had actually brought my ex-husband with her, and he was down on his knees apologizing next to her.
"To tell you the truth, I realized what a wonderful daughter-in-law and wife that you were. But in order to help you grow, I had to make myself a monster, and I was too harsh on you. Don't you know that it was painful for me, too? But I was just taking on my role as the mother-in-law and helping you for your own sake. So, will you please come back now?"
That's right. Please come back, Ashley.
There's no way. But also, the only reason why you're begging me to come back to the house is for the money, isn't it? I have $70,000, and I was also a crucial source of income. But that's not going to happen. Well then, leave. Go home. And I kicked my ex-husband and my ex-mother-in-law away from my family house. In the end, Thomas didn't get remarried to Nancy, but that was obvious. Why would anybody want to marry a guy with reckless spending habits and a mother-in-law that was that infuriating? I don't think that there's any woman in this world that would want to live with those two. This elderly woman and middle-aged man had lost all of the money from selling the family house and paying these settlement fees, and I heard that they are living sad lives now.
I had a girlfriend who I've been dating since I was a student. After I became an adult, I worked hard for a few years and my salary was getting stable. So if she ever tells me that she doesn't want to work, or if she ever gives birth to a baby, I thought I'd be able to support her. So I proposed to her. We've been dating for so long, so I cringed a bit, but she happily accepted my proposal. We went to visit both of our parents, sent betrothal gifts, and because we had our wedding in our hometown, our relatives, our boss, as well as colleagues, and our local friends who we've known for a long time all participated, and it was a very lively party. I was also relieved that I had reached a turning point in my life. She must have felt lonely for the past few years, so I wanted us to stay lovey-dovey from now on. That was what I was planning for my newlywed life. But unlike my predictions, my marriage life was very simple. We got married after dating since our student years, so I guess our lovey-dovey era was already over. And although I was a bit upset, I was happy to see her when I got home. But shortly after, I was getting bothered by something I never realized when I was single. First of all, my wife comes home very late. She often comes back home around midnight and says that she had to work till late. She would rarely come home at the hour her work was scheduled to end. And even at home, she would usually be on her phone and brings her phone with her to the bathroom as well. I got a bit suspicious, and while she was taking a shower, I secretly checked her phone. Then I found out that she was texting with this particular guy on messages often. When I checked the messages they had been sending each other...
My work would end at this time today. Where do you want to eat next time?
Seeing the messages reminded me of the conversations I had with her while we were still dating each other. We rarely had any conversations like this anymore, but she was messaging a man I didn't know as if they had just begun dating, and my emotions were a mess with sadness and hatred. We did talk to each other about daily necessities, but she comes home late, so we didn't get to spend much time together, and we rarely went out anymore. By the way, she would often go to work on the weekends as well, saying something urgent came up. But then, I can't help but wonder why my wife decided to marry me. Was she already cheating on me before we got married? I was starting to have these thoughts, so I decided to investigate thoroughly. From the next day, I tried to investigate her actions and whereabouts, but I was struggling to catch her red-handed. There were limits for an amateur like me to investigate, and if I act too suspicious, my wife would find out and try even harder to keep her affair a secret, so I decided to hire a detective. Fortunately, we both worked full-time, so even if I used some of my savings, she wouldn't realize. In just a week after I hired a detective, they managed to get a photo as undeniable proof. Actually, I still trusted my wife till then. Her messages revealed that she was going out for meals with him, but I wasn't sure if there was anything sexual involved. But I felt devastated after seeing the photo as proof. In the photo, I saw my wife and her lover leaving the company together. I also saw photos of her having fun while she ate at a fancy Italian restaurant we've never been to. And the detective even managed to take a photo of them entering a hotel together. I then realized that we haven't had sex for a while, but thinking that she was sexually active with this guy, tears formed in my eyes out of anger and regret. After that, by the time I left the detective's office, I was starting to think how to get revenge on her. That was the only thing on my mind. With the proof, I visited the lawyer's office, and when I showed them the proof I gathered, "This is more than enough. Let's take action right away." That was what he said, but I asked if we could wait until the new year. I had already started preparing to get revenge on my ex-wife. It wasn't enough just to show her these photos as proof. I wanted her to hit rock bottom in life with her lover. So until then, I spent my usual marriage life with my wife. My wife believed that I didn't know anything about her affair. So even if she went out on dates with him and went to hotels, I endured it. And it was time for me to get revenge on her. That year, we decided to spend New Year's Eve at her parents' house. My wife assumed that we'd go to my parents' house, so she seemed a bit confused, but I told her, it's okay, we can go there anytime, and tried to play it cool. After we arrived at her parents' house, I spent a peaceful New Year's Eve watching the New Year's concert with her parents, and the next morning, as we ate the New Year's feast, we planned to go to the shrine for a blessing, until we received a phone call. Here we go. I thought it was finally time, and I slowly stood up from my seat. Then I quietly left the house. My revenge plan was to send a New Year's greeting card using various photos of my wife cheating on me to all the guests who came to my wedding. The detective took plenty of photos for me, so the photos used were all different. I knew it was pretty time-consuming, but thinking that I'd be able to send her to hell, it was really nothing. Among the guests invited to our wedding, there was her boss, too, so I get to hit two birds with one stone. I bet the celebratory mood at her parents' house had turned into a hectic one by now. My wife seemed to realize that I disappeared from her parents' house, and I received a lot of phone calls and texts from her, but I ignored all of them and headed to my own parents' house. When I went back, my parents were surprised, but when I told them what happened, You're an adult. We respect your decisions. Do whatever you want. That was what he said. Obviously, my wife called my parents' house many times as well, but I had them answer that I wasn't here and pretended like I didn't exist. My wife continued to contact me, so I left a simple message. I'll visit your parents' house with my lawyer on the first weekend after the New Year's break. After the New Year's break, I visited their house with my lawyer, as I said. I found her parents on their knees apologizing, and I don't know how much the people around her criticized her, but my wife was waiting for me there looking very thin and worn out. My parents-in-law also gave me a look as if saying that it was too much to send a New Year's greeting card to all the guests invited to our wedding. But it was their daughter who was cheating on me, so they never dared to say it out loud. Please forgive us, I beg you, my father-in-law said, but I'm sorry, but I'm planning to get a divorce. If not, I wouldn't have done something like this.
No, wait, please forgive me. We've been spending a long time together, so I just wanted some spice. It's not like I don't love you anymore. I'm begging for mercy.
She begged for mercy. I don't care anymore. I just wanted to get revenge on you. You're right, we've been together for so long. But I was overjoyed that we could finally move in together and stay together forever. But I guess you didn't feel the same. I bet I looked very cold when I said that, and my wife's face tightened with fear. I did feel a bit sorry for her parents, to be honest. We had been dating since we were students, so I thought of them as my real parents. But I don't want to keep in touch after being cheated on by their daughter. I left my wife, who wept as she apologized, and I stepped out of their house with my lawyer. Of course, I sent the card to her lover as well. It looks like he also had a wife, and it seems like they had a huge fight. But that's none of my business. I left the rest to my lawyer, and he got me compensation money from the both of them. Everyone got to know about their affair through the greeting card, and both my wife and her lover got fired from work. With so many people aware of their affair, rumors got out of hand, and her lover got divorced, shut himself in, and was no longer able to work anymore. My wife also got exposed to a lot of criticism, and it seems like she took pills to mentally stabilize herself, but ended up getting depressed and also shut herself in. I never thought I'd be betrayed by my wife, who I finally got to marry after dating her a long time. But I have no regrets.
I'm a housewife living with my husband and son. My son goes to kindergarten, and the family of one of his classmates moved nearby recently. They had 2 cars, but only a 1-car garage, so they parked one of them on the street. My husband and I run a small business and rent a parking spot elsewhere. The mother of my son's classmate, Hillary, heard about it and came up to me one day saying, "I heard you rent a parking spot somewhere even though you have spots on your property." I didn't see her point in saying that, which only made me a little uncomfortable. Soon my hunch turned out right. One day, as I was pulling into our parking spot, I noticed a white minivan parked there. That looked familiar to me. Hillary drove that to pick up his son at kindergarten. I also checked the license number. I called her up immediately, but she didn't answer the phone, so I had no choice but to park my car for our business lots. I called her again a little later, and she answered this time. "Hi, Hillary, I saw your car in our parking spot. Could you move it now?" "I'll move it in 3 hours or so, thank you." No, you can't do that. I'd like you to move it right now. All right. But she didn't. She showed up 3 hours later. I told her, you can't do this again. We'll have big trouble if you do this.
What's the big deal? You have a business and you have spots for it. You can just park right there.
That's not your concern. We rent this parking lot. We pay for it.
Why can't you let me use it when it's available?
How can you decide when it's available? You don't know. It's just because it's empty. You should rent your own space if you need to. I told her firmly, but she shrugged and walked away. I wasn't sure if she understood. Then the same thing happened within just a few days. I called her up and told her to move it. We repeated the same kind of conversation. I realized I needed a step further for this kind of person. A month later, Hillary approached me at the kindergarten and talked to me in a friendly way.
Thank you for letting me use your parking spot for a month. That helped us a lot.
Really? I've been parking my car on my spot all this time.
What? What are you talking about? I've been using your spot for a month now.
It can't be because I changed the spot.
What? How could you do this to me?
You don't know why? I've been paying for my parking lot and you don't stop using it. What's the point of me keeping that spot?
Oh no, you should have told me.
That's not my problem. I don't pay for that spot anymore. You just parked your car there for a month for free. They charge $300 per day for unauthorized parking.
You must be joking.
Not at all. You've never noticed there's a big sign there stating that? While we were having the conversation, her phone rang. She went pale as she answered the call. From what I understood, the spot was vacant for a while after I made a change. When somebody signed the contract and tried to park in that spot, her car was parked there. Naturally, the person called up the company to complain about it. And when the company investigated the problem using the security camera, they discovered not only just one time, but the whole month. She was using that spot without permission. They called the police, who found the owner of the car. Hillary hung up the phone and said,
How could you do this to me? It's all your fault. I owe them a $9,000 penalty now.
In what way is it my fault? I told you again and again not to park your car in my spot, but you never listened to me and kept using my spot. I had no choice but to change it. Now you have to pay the penalty. It's only logical.
Not at all. You only used the spot occasionally. You could have just been a little more kind to me and let me use it. What can you do now? $9,000? This is all your fault and you should pay for it.
Could you please stop joking? Just talk to anybody about this. Anybody will see you started all of this.
Do you have any idea if my husband finds out about this?
Whether your husband finds out or not, you owe them the penalty, that's for sure. She turned blue as she heard my words. There was no way to come up with that amount of money without telling the truth to the family, so she just ignored it. Then they got a letter of warning from the parking company, and then her husband knew the truth for the first time. It wasn't hard to imagine how furious her husband became. He also found out about the trouble she'd caused us and came by to apologize, with an envelope in his hand with some compensation.
I'm truly sorry for what my wife did to you. I had no idea about what was going on. I'm speechless. I will make sure something like this will never happen again.
He apologized to us sincerely, but I had to ask him why he had no idea about his wife owning 2 cars. He said Hillary lied to him that she found a parking lot elsewhere, so he had no idea she just parked anywhere she could, from the street to somebody's parking lot. She then used the money for herself that she had been given for parking. It was lucky for us that the husband was a man of sense, although his wife was impossible. All that penalty she owed was for her to pay back, of course. Not only did she not have any money to use freely, but had no choice but to have 2 jobs, day and night, and no other choice but to move in with her in-laws. She said things couldn't be worse, but it was all she had caused herself. She had some nerve to call me to ask for help, about half of the money she owed. So I called her husband right away. And this time, not only her husband, but her parents-in-law showed up at the door to apologize. This time, she seemed to get punished severely. They'd planned a family trip for the sake of their child. They went on the trip, but only with the child, her husband, and in-laws, but not her. She had to keep working. She was excited about the trip before and bragging about it to all the other mothers at the kindergarten. I can imagine her disappointment. As usual, the word spread among other mothers, which gave them a warning. The mothers group abandoned her, and eventually there was no one to talk to her. She's still saying that if I could only tell her about changing my spot, that would have only caused the same trouble over again with my new spot.
My name is Emma, and I live with my husband, James. Ever since we got married, we've both been working full-time, so splitting the household chores has always seemed natural. That said, James isn't great in the kitchen, and he's a bit on the laid-back side, so I've ended up doing about 80% of the housework. Even so, I never thought about complaining. Even when work got busy and I came home exhausted, I'd still make sure to keep up with the cleaning and laundry since I've always liked a tidy space. I work at a real estate company, and things get especially hectic around the end of the fiscal year. One night, after working late again, I didn't have time to cook dinner, so I picked up some food from the grocery store and rushed home. When I got there, my husband was already back. Exhausted, I started heating up the deli foods in the microwave, and as he watched, he snapped.
Why are we having deli foods? We agreed to split the chores, didn't we? Stop trying to take the easy way out.
I tried explaining, yet again, that there wasn't much I could do when work got this busy. But he didn't want to hear it. He kept going, saying,
Must be nice for you. You just leave the dishes to me and relax. This is not splitting chores, slacking off like this.
Yet he ate everything I brought home, didn't clean up, and went straight for a shower before bed. Despite doing far less around the house than me, my husband couldn't hold back his complaints just because I couldn't make dinner that one night. I was honestly stunned. A few days later, once my work finally started to settle down and I had a bit more time, I suddenly got a call from my mother-in-law. As soon as I picked up, she began,
So, it's true that you've been slacking off, dumping all the housework on James, and not even cooking dinner for him?
She sounded pretty angry. She went on,
I don't care how tired you are from work, leaving all the chores for your husband? Oh, that's just irresponsible. You are failing as a wife.
I was furious at her for making these assumptions, especially since I was the one with the busier job and handling most of the housework. She had no idea what was really going on, yet she was quick to judge. But more than anything, I was beyond annoyed with my husband. He went and tattled to his mom just because I'd served deli foods for dinner once. So I decided to make him a little proposal. That evening, my husband came home acting as if nothing had happened. I said to him, Your mom called me today. I'm sorry if I've been putting too much on you. How about we switch up the chores and you take my share starting tomorrow? He replied rather smugly.
Yeah, let's do that.
He must have thought I was genuinely apologizing. So, starting the next day, I stopped cooking, doing the laundry, and cleaning. My responsibilities were now only to clear the table after meals and take out the trash. My husband, meanwhile, was responsible for all the chores I'd handled without a second thought. It didn't take long before I noticed him struggling, spending way more time on tasks he wasn't used to. Dinner started getting later each night, and my husband was coming home completely worn out. When I asked, You look really tired lately, what's going on? He snapped.
Why don't you help out a bit?
So I replied, Wasn't I the one taking it easy? He couldn't say anything to that. About a week went by like this, and I got another call from my mother-in-law.
Hey, is it true that you've stopped doing any housework? Oh, poor James. If you're not going to do your part, maybe you should just get a divorce and leave.
My mother-in-law shouted, so I decided to tell her everything. Then her anger shifted quickly to my husband. Actually, she's strong-willed and has a strict sense of right and wrong, so finding out he'd lied to make me look bad left her furious.
I'm coming over to set him straight. Just wait,
she said and hung up. That evening, when I got home from work, I was shocked by the scene that greeted me. The house was a complete mess, trash scattered everywhere, laundry and dishes thrown on the floor. For a moment, I thought we'd been robbed and was about to call the police. Just then, my mother-in-law arrived, and she was speechless at the mess. She immediately pulled out her phone to call the police. Right then, my husband came home looking panicked.
There's no need to call the police!
He stammered. I asked him what was going on as he looked suspicious, and to my shock, he admitted that he was the one responsible. Exhausted from doing all the chores, he'd trashed the place to make me understand just how hard it was. When I heard my husband say he felt a bit better just picturing me frantically cleaning up the mess, I felt more fear than anger. My mother-in-law, furious, told him to clean it up immediately. Sulking, he grumbled,
Why should I?
But couldn't argue with her and reluctantly started tidying up. Halfway through, he started complaining that he was tired and turned to me, saying,
Housework is a woman's job. Just because you make a little money doesn't mean you should get all high and mighty for a woman.
The moment he said, for a woman, my mother-in-law slapped him hard across the face.
For a woman? Oh, I won't let that slide. And anyway, you two only have 2 incomes because you don't earn enough money. If you don't want to split the chores, then earn enough so Emma can be a full-time housewife. If you can't even do that, you have no right to complain.
My mother-in-law shouted. My husband, looking shaken, stammered and asked,
Mom, are you taking Emma's side?
But her anger had not cooled with just a scolding. She turned to me and said,
Emma, I am truly sorry. Please give me some time. I'll make sure he learns his lesson.
Then she took him by the arm and marched him out. With my husband gone, I found myself with fewer chores and more time to relax. I settled into a steady routine, balancing work and enjoying a slower pace. Then one day my husband called me, crying.
Emma, I'm so sorry. Please, come help me.
He begged. When I asked what was going on, he explained that ever since he'd been taken back to his parents' house, his mom had been waking him up at dawn every day to help with the housework. No matter how exhausted he was from work, she refused to let him off the hook, making him do everything himself without cutting him any slack. Within a week, my husband couldn't take it and was begging for my help.
Please, just tell my mom that I've learned my lesson. I can't take it anymore.
He pleaded, and I replied, maybe give it a little more time to reflect and call me again when you're really sorry, and hung up. After that, my mother-in-law kept me updated on his progress. Apparently, ever since she decided to straighten him out, he'd been complaining every day, saying,
I can't do this anymore. I want to go home.
Not being a morning person, he'd throw a fit like a child whenever she woke him up at dawn for chores, begging her to let him return to me. Just as I was starting to think about forgiving my husband, I got sick with gastroenteritis, likely from the stress of work, and ended up being hospitalized. When the hospital contacted my husband, he rushed in looking pale. As soon as he saw me, he broke down in tears, grabbed my hand, and said,
Emma, I am truly sorry.
He promised.
I'll never push you like that again. I'll help more with the housework.
Hearing his words, I started to think maybe I could give him another chance. After I was discharged from the hospital, my husband came home and started helping more with the housework and cooking. Thanks to his efforts, I recovered much faster than expected and was able to return to work. However, I soon realized that continuing my overly busy job was no longer sustainable, so I talked to my husband about it. From that point on, he threw himself into his work, aiming for a promotion. A year later, his hard work had paid off, and his income increased, allowing me to become a full-time housewife. My husband still talks about the time he was sent back to his parents' house as a terrifying experience. It was then that he realized just how important I am to him, and he told me that he never wants to lose me again. Since then, he's been treating me with much more care. My mother-in-law, though, still keeps an eye on him, warning,
If you get too cocky, I'll send you back again.
So I'm sure he won't make the same mistake again. As a full-time housewife, life has become much easier, and I've started to think about having children. I want to show my mother-in-law, who supported me, the joy of becoming a grandmother soon. With my husband's change of heart, I'm looking forward to continuing to build a happy family together.
I'm Emily, married and 28 years old. I work at a local casual restaurant. My husband Tom is an office worker, but his income isn't enough to support us both, so I work to make ends meet. Tom is rather careless with money, so I manage the household finances. He had no concerns about it, but made sure he had a good time. Recently, he often said something like,
Why don't you put on some makeup and get your nails done?
although he never said anything about my appearance before. Since we handled food, we were not allowed to wear heavy makeup or nail polish at work. But he complained about my appearance every time he saw me. At first, I just ignored those comments, but lately his words have become more and more harsh. I couldn't help feeling my growing frustration. One day, we were going to have dinner at his parents' house, and we went to a mall to buy a gift for them. As we entered the building, he started walking faster as if he wanted to distance himself from me. I caught up with him and said, "Hey, slow down. Why are you walking so fast?"
Don't get so close to me. You're so plain and not attractive at all. I don't want to be seen as your husband.
I was shocked to hear that. As we passed by a woman, he said,
Isn't she pretty? You should try to be like that too.
His careless words hurt me. I didn't want to make a scene in public, so I sealed my lips, but as soon as we got back to the car, I couldn't help but bursting into a rage. "I can't take this anymore." And he said,
It's your fault. You should try to be more womanly.
He didn't say any more no matter what I said. We arrived at his parents' house dragging our tense feelings. He continued to insult my appearance in front of his parents and sister. When he got drunk, that escalated.
I should never have married someone like her. She's not feminine at all. She makes no effort to look beautiful and never puts on makeup. She has no interest in getting her nails done or going to the spa. I don't want somebody who forgot how to be a woman for my wife.
When I heard his heartless words, I couldn't find a word to respond anymore. I just got depressed and stayed quiet. Then my sister-in-law, Julie, shouted at him suddenly.
You should think about what you're saying hard. Emily works at a restaurant to support both of you. She can't wear makeup or have her nails done if she wants to.
Then she told him to apologize to me.
I just want my wife to look prettier. Like Romy next door.
He took a glance at me for a moment and looked away. That gave me an eerie feeling, and I started thinking about checking his whereabouts. The dinner didn't go well because the siblings kept arguing. When I got home, I got a call from Julie. She said,
I am ashamed to have a brother like that.
She apologized to me sincerely. She was also kind enough to tell me that if there was anything she could do to help me, she would do so. That made me feel better and realize that I should start investigating. If Tom was doing something wrong, it had to be when I was out for work. So I told him I would go to work when I was actually off and watched him. As soon as I left home, I saw Romy, who lives next door, come to our house. She opened the door as if she would come into her own house, and she didn't come out for a while. It didn't look like she had any business at my house. I decided to sneak into the house, but they were not in the living room. A bad feeling led me to reach the bedroom door, and there I found Tom and Romy in our bed smooching. Without thinking, I found myself taking some pictures of the two, and I shouted at them,
What's going on here?
They jumped off the bed. They were naked. I made sure to take that picture as well.
We need to talk, including your husband, Romy.
Then she said, Please don't tell my husband. As she grabbed my arm, I noticed her shiny nails, which made me furious.
I found myself saying, I am filing for divorce and you will pay for this.
And I just left. Tom followed me and said,
Wait, I'm sorry. It was a mistake.
Stay away from me, you filthy bastard.
And I ran. Once out, I immediately called Julie. I told her what had just happened, and she said she would come over for the talk, along with her parents. I got a hold of Romy's husband, Dylan, as he came home, and we talked at our house. Dylan seemed to have no clue.
Can anyone explain this to me?
Romy, why don't you tell it to your husband? Romy couldn't say a word. Tears flowed down her cheek, so I had to explain it to him, showing him the photos as evidence. He was very upset and shouted at Romy.
What are these? Explain to me!
Romy started telling the story crying. Tom took advantage of my irregular work schedule and invited Romy over to my house while I was at work. They both insisted that the other had initiated. There was no way of knowing what had actually happened. It didn't make much difference, though. An affair is an affair. It was unforgivable. All this time, Tom had compared me and Romy and insulted my appearance. No amount of excuses or apologies would change my mind. I said flatly, I'm filing for divorce.
You're going too far. Besides, how are you going to make a living without me?
So I grabbed my notebook for the household finances and showed it to him in front of everybody. It proved that my income exceeded his and I could live comfortably by myself. Tom couldn't say anything. I felt bad about Emily when you two came over for dinner the other day. Emily, you would be better off without him. I'm going to cut ties with him too. Feeling unbearable to be cut ties from his own family, he apologized and expressed remorse. But there was no response in the room. Please, don't ever call me again. Julie's words were the last we heard that day, and they left. I moved out of the house and started living on my own while filing for divorce. My finances have been stable with the compensation coming in through Tom and Romy. Not only was Romy kicked out of her house by Dylan, but she also had to pay him compensation. Dylan's high income allowed her to be a housewife for many years, but now she owed money to me and him. She had to borrow a large amount of money from her family and friends. She worked multiple part-time jobs to pay off her debts, but she was barely able to pay them back and struggled to make ends meet. Gradually, the people around her started to distance themselves from her, and she ended up isolated and miserable. As for Tom, he got cut off from all family ties and lived alone. He realized he couldn't support himself by his only income and asked me for help. I didn't even respond. I'm free and happy. Tom didn't want to run into Dylan in the neighborhood and wanted to move out, but he couldn't afford it and stayed in the house. The story of his affair spread in the neighborhood, but he had to endure people's cold stares and lived there with a tight budget. I increased my hours at work after the divorce. After a while, I had enough money, so I bought a new car. I enjoy driving my new car on my day off. I started thinking about meeting someone new and my next life plans. I'm trying to be decently feminine, not for somebody else, but for my own sake.
My name is Mary. I work at an advertising agency. I have a boyfriend called Michael who also works in the same company. He's very easygoing and usually nice, but his selfish trait troubles me. Especially when we eat meals together. He loves to eat so much that he would even eat my food without asking. So I felt stressed and uncomfortable whenever we had a meal together. It was when we went to eat some pasta after work.
One meat sauce pasta, please?
Then I'll get the cod roe cream pasta. Okay. I always wanted to try their cod roe cream pasta because I heard rumors about it tasting delicious.
I see. I always get the meat sauce pasta.
When the staff brought us my cod roe cream pasta first, he did something unbelievable.
Looks delicious. I'm digging in.
Huh? Wait! After that, he finished half of my pasta like that was a normal thing to do. At first, I thought he might have wanted to share, so I stayed silent, keeping my calm and observing him. But when the staff brought him his meat sauce pasta, he ate everything, never offering me a bite. This wasn't limited to when we ate out, but the same thing also happened when I cooked him a meal at home. I prepared some salad, soup, and Hamburg steak today.
Oh, the Hamburg steak looks delicious. I'm digging in.
After he quickly finished his serving, he reached for my Hamburg steak as well. Hey, stop it, that's mine!
It's no big deal. I thought you were on a diet.
When did I say that?
You're chubby. If you're not on a diet yet, you should start now.
Compared to him, who was slim but a big eater, I admit that I am a bit chubby. But I wasn't fat, and I never worried too much about my body shape, so I thought it was none of his business, and he irritated me. I am not going on a diet. I also want to eat this Hamburg steak.
Whoa, you're such a glutton.
It's you who's a glutton, Michael. There was no point for me to argue, and he just ignored me, forcefully took my Hamburg steak away, and finished it in one bite. Then he put down his chopsticks, looking fulfilled.
Whew, that was good. Thanks for the meal.
How about your salad and soup?
You can eat them. I don't really like vegetables.
He didn't even touch his soup and salad, and after he finished eating his Hamburg steak, he started to tidy up the dishes. He was getting worse day by day. And he would sometimes finish all the food by himself, ignoring me, who clearly looked uncomfortable. One day, when we went to eat some grilled meat together, something that would test my limits happened. After we ordered some meat, taking a look at the menu, I stood up to go to the restroom. I had a bad feeling about it, so I hurried back to my table. But I was right after all. He had grilled all the meat by himself and was hurrying to finish them all, although they weren't grilled enough yet. When I was observing him secretly, he grilled all the meat I ordered at once. And seeing him gulping them all up, I couldn't help but feel speechless. Hey, where's my meat?
I'm so full. Should we get the check?
When I heard him say that, my anger exploded, and I finally complained to him. I've had enough. Why do you always eat my serving too? I'm going home.
Hey, wait, why are you so mad?
That day, I went home alone, leaving him at the restaurant. The next day, I bet he felt bad, and he apologized to me at the office.
Mary, I'm sorry about yesterday. I'm surprised to know that you really wanted to eat meat.
Don't make it sound like I'm obsessed with eating.
Come on, I'm sorry.
You better not do the same again in the future.
Okay.
He did apologize to me, so I decided to forgive him this time. During lunch break, when I was about to eat lunch at the canteen, he sat down next to me.
I'm also having my lunch now, so let's eat together.
Sure. I ordered the fried chicken set while he ordered fried pork with eggs. When I sat down next to him and was about to start eating, he took my fried chicken and ate it first as always.
The fried chicken tastes great as usual. I had trouble deciding which to get.
Hey! I thought you said you'd be careful next time.
Huh? I thought you were just referring to grilled meat.
No, I meant that I want you to stop eating my order like this all the time.
But you're more overweight than me. How about you start eating less?
It's none of your business. Go get me another fried chicken set.
I don't mind, but make sure you pay for it.
Why? I haven't eaten anything yet.
You're fat because you're so obsessed with eating. You better feel ashamed about your body.
There were so many other employees eating at the canteen, but he loudly insulted me about my body, and I was on the verge of tears. Then my female boss, called Mrs. O'Brien, who was watching us, suddenly came to stand next to him. She was serious about her work and very strict. But she was a bit chubby and very kind when we were off work. Mrs. O'Brien, who everyone in the office feared, suddenly stood next to him and he got scared and shut his mouth. Then Mrs. O'Brien suddenly started to yell at him.
You better stop all this nonsense. I have been listening to your conversation and I can't believe you're an adult, hearing you speak so much nonsense without any common sense.
Huh? Oh no!
You ate someone else's food without permission and even insulted a woman's body. How awful can you be? Apologize to her now.
I'm sorry.
He seemed really scared of how fierce Mrs. O'Brien was, and he apologized as he bowed to me. Then Mrs. O'Brien turned to me.
I think it's best for you to break up with a guy like him. It's not just a problem about whether he's a glutton or not. He lacks consideration for others. He doesn't deserve you.
I agree.
Wait, calm down.
Shut up and go order a new set of fried chicken.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll educate that guy very well. You must have gone through a lot.
Hearing Mrs. O'Brien's words, I felt like I was finally able to wake up from a bad dream. And that night, after giving some thought, I decided to break up with him. After work the next day, I asked if we can meet up.
What do you want to talk to me about?
I want to break up with you. Just like Mrs. O'Brien said, I think you lack consideration for others. I can't stay with someone who would make me stressed whenever I go to have a meal with them.
No way! I can't accept that as a reason for our breakup.
I think it's time you realize how abnormal you are. I'm breaking up with you no matter what. Goodbye.
Wait, Mary! I'm sorry!
After breaking up with him, I was finally free from stress and was able to enjoy my meal to the fullest. By the way, after the incident at the canteen, he had to transfer to Mrs. O'Brien's department, and she strictly educated him there every day. He must have been really afraid of her because within a week he started skipping work, and he never came back to the office again. After a while, when I was walking through town, I found him looking filthy with an untidy beard and long hair that reached his shoulders, leaving a pinball parlor. It looks like he got addicted to gambling after quitting his job and was living a life without any future plans and no stable job. Now that he had left the company, I no longer had to feel uncomfortable, and I started to work even harder so that I can become a boss like Miss O'Brien. As a result, I got a promotion, and I was getting a higher pay. I was living a more fulfilling life compared to when I was dating him. My name is Melissa. I work part-time at a department store, and I'm a 28-year-old housewife. I got married to my husband, Thomas, and we were about to celebrate our 4th wedding anniversary. To this day, we got along really well, and we were also living happily together without any problems in our marriage. But then one day, I suddenly received a phone call to the house from my mother-in-law. That was when we found out that Thomas's mother was in the hospital after getting pneumonia. Both my husband and I were extremely worried, and we ran straight to the hospital. But the doctor told us that she was fine, and that she would be able to be discharged in about 2 to 3 days. Thomas and I were both really relieved. That being said, even after she was discharged from the hospital, I knew that it would be difficult for her to go back to her normal life. And so that was when I decided to try to be helpful. My father-in-law was on a long-term business trip, and he and my mother-in-law were actually living separately for the time being. When my father-in-law found out that his wife was hospitalized, he was extremely worried. Then he asked me for a big favor and said he wanted me to help take care of his wife's meals and keep her company at the family house for a while. And so, because my husband was busy with his job every day on my way home from my part-time job, I would go by his family house to help with his mother. In the beginning, my mother-in-law wasn't back to her usual self, so I was doing my best to prepare healthy meals for her. Because my mother-in-law still wasn't healthy, she was quiet in the beginning, but as she started to regain her health, she started to make more and more complaints about my cooking.
This is completely tasteless. It tastes awful.
She would always complain about my food, and then start pouring soy sauce and salt and other condiments all over my cooking. I thought that maybe she liked things to be a little bit saltier than usual, so the next time I tried to add a little bit of extra salt to her plate, but then she said,
Oh my goodness, this is so salty. If I keep eating like this, I'm never going to get healthy again.
That's what she said to me, and I didn't know what to do. When I tried to discuss this with my husband, he said to me,
Well, you know what? Mom seems to be doing fine these days, and she's back to healthy, so I don't think you need to go over there anymore.
and I was really relieved to have his support. When I spoke to my mother-in-law about that, this time she said to me,
My goodness, are you planning on just leaving me when I'm still sick and unwell?
and she started sobbing on the phone. According to her, she said that she wasn't back to being healthy yet, and so at the very least she wanted me to come over and make her dinner every day. I felt like I had no choice, so I agreed. But then my mother-in-law started to get carried away.
I want to have sirloin steak for dinner tonight. I want to have the freshest fish for sashimi tonight.
And then she started making these requests and demanding specific menus for dinner every night. My husband and I were covering all of the food expenses for his mother, but every single day she started to request things that would cost more money, and our household finances were starting to become difficult. But my mother-in-law paid no mind to that. One day, I cooked something that wasn't exactly what my mother-in-law had requested for dinner that evening, and she was furious.
I told you that I wanted to have fish for dinner tonight, didn't I? I didn't say a single word about wanting to eat a beef and potato stew. Are you kidding me?
And then she grabbed a bowl of beef and potato stew that I had just made and she threw it straight into the trash. I was furious and I couldn't hold it in.
If that's what you're going to do to my cooking, I'm not going to cook for you anymore.
I was so upset that I stormed out of my mother-in-law's house. I went home, and that evening my husband came home, but to my shock, he started yelling at me.
Hey, Melissa, I heard everything that happened today from my mom. You yelled at her, and then you threw the dinner in the trash and stormed out of her house? Why on earth would you do that? How horrible! My mom was crying to me while I was at work.
I couldn't believe the words that just came out of his mouth.
Excuse me? Your mom is the one that threw away the beef and potatoes that I had made for her for dinner.
Then I was shaking with anger, and I told him everything that happened that day in detail. Thomas then quickly apologized.
I'm sorry for just believing everything that my mom said.
I then explained to Thomas that his mother was being really difficult about the food from before, and that I was starting to reach the limit of my patience, and I told him that our household finances were getting scarce because of the requests that my mother-in-law was making, and then my husband replied,
Okay, let me try talking to my dad about it.
And that evening he picked up the phone and he called his father, and that was when we found out that every month he was actually giving his wife money for the food expenses and had told his wife,
Make sure you give this to Melissa for her cooking.
But of course, neither Thomas nor I had ever received any of that money. My husband was starting to become suspicious of his mom, and so he started saying that he was going to do an investigation to see what his mom was doing with the money that his dad had given her. He said that if he tried to confront his mom about it directly, she would probably come up with a lie and try to brush it off. I told Thomas that I would help him in any way that I could. And so for that reason, I decided to tolerate it for a little bit longer and continue going to my mother-in-law's house to cook for her. However, my husband said that he wanted to avoid causing me any more stress than my mother-in-law already had. So this time he said that he would cook for her and take it to the house. Thomas insisted, so I decided to agree and let him do it. The next day, I went over to my mother-in-law's house, holding the bento that Thomas had made the day before. That evening, when I gave her the bento, my mother-in-law wrongly assumed that I had made it, and the first words out of her mouth were,
This is disgusting. You really think that this is edible? There's no way I could eat something this horrible.
And she said that, and she flipped the entire bento onto the table. When I went home and told my husband everything that happened, this time he had an idea.
I'm gonna make the exact same thing tonight for you to bring to her tomorrow. But this time I want you to tell her before she starts eating that I'm the one that made it.
The next day, when I got to my mother-in-law's house, before I served her the food, I said, Today is a meal that Thomas made for you. When I said that, my mother-in-law was thrilled.
Wow, oh, this is so delicious. This is why my son is the best. What a huge difference from somebody else that I know who only makes terrible meals.
And she finished every grain of rice in the bento. When I got home and told my husband what happened, he said,
Well, then it's confirmed. It just means that Mom just wanted to bully you, and that has nothing to do with your cooking.
And he had a stern look on his face. From there, I started lying to my mother-in-law each day that my husband had made the food for her. And instead of cooking, I would just take the store-bought food that my husband was buying the day before on sale at the shop and taking it to her house.
There's no doubt that this cooking is the exact same flavors that I made for Thomas when he was growing up. He must have remembered my cooking.
And she would eat the store-bought food with a huge smile on her face. But then one day, I finished my shift at my part-time job earlier than usual, and I went straight to my mother-in-law's house. However, when I arrived there early, I noticed a pair of men's shoes at the front door. I thought it was suspicious, so I very quietly entered and tiptoed into the house. But then I heard the voice of my mother-in-law with a man coming from the bedroom. I thought that maybe it could be my father-in-law, so first I called my husband to confirm with him. But then he said that his father-in-law was definitely working right now, so that it had to be a different man, and he was shocked. Even though my husband was in the middle of his workday, he came running over to the house and he barged into the bedroom. When he opened the door, right in front of us was his mother, naked, lying in bed with a young man that we had never seen before.
Mom! What on earth is going on here?
Thomas was furious and yelling, and then my mother-in-law started to panic.
No! Oh, this isn't what it looks like. Oh, please, you can't tell your father about this.
Then the young man put his clothes on and tried to get away, but we weren't going to let that happen. You're not going anywhere. We pinned him down and we immediately called Thomas's father. Then we made my mother-in-law and this young man sit down in the living room and we waited for the arrival of Thomas's father. 1 hour later, Thomas's father was actually in the neighboring state for work, but he left his meetings early and came running back home. When Thomas explained the complete situation to him, my father-in-law was furious. Normally he was a calm and quiet man, but that was nowhere to be found. My mother-in-law was sobbing and apologizing, but of course he wasn't going to forgive her. He then told her that she better tell the truth, and she opened up about the affair. As it turns out, my mother-in-law was using the fact that her husband was away on a long-term business trip, and she was going in and out of escort lounges. And she met a young man there, and she was using all of the money that her husband was giving her and spending it on this man. And then the young man confessed.
Even though she's just a customer, she was putting in a lot of money towards me, so I had no choice.
And he deeply apologized to my father-in-law. My father-in-law was shocked that his wife was using the money that he was earning, not only on a young man, but that his wife had also pursued a physical relationship with him. And he served her the divorce papers on the spot. My mother-in-law was begging him.
Please, anything but a divorce. Both of my parents have already passed away. There's nowhere I can go.
And my mother-in-law was begging at her husband's feet, but he looked away and didn't pay any attention to her. And then my husband said,
I don't think of you as my mother anymore. You're disgusting. Now hurry up and get out.
And he disowned her. But then, I don't know what my mother-in-law was thinking, but she turned to me and said,
Hey, Melissa, you need to help me. Convince them otherwise.
None of my business, was all I said. In the end, my mother-in-law was kicked out of the family house and she had nowhere to go, so she was stuck staying in a hotel for a while. My father-in-law collected a settlement fee from both my mother-in-law and the young man she was having an affair with. And in the divorce, he only gave her a small portion from a joint account that they had in the separation of assets. My mother-in-law was left with barely any money in her hands, and it wasn't long before she wasn't able to pay the hotel fees anymore. My mother-in-law called me and started begging us to let her live in our house, but of course both my husband and I replied immediately that there is no way. But we did feel bad if she was going to become homeless, so we found an extremely cheap, run-down apartment and recommended that to her. My mother-in-law was stuck, living off of only her Social Security. Apparently, she's living a life so poor that she can't even eat anything that she wants to anymore. For the record, as for the guy she was having an affair with, he was only paying attention to her because he was after her money, and he was furious that because of her, he had to pay a settlement fee as well. And after that, he refused to see my mother-in-law ever again. But the lounge where he was working found out that he was having an extramarital affair with such an elderly woman, and the rumors spread quickly. None of his customers wanted to see him anymore, and because he couldn't earn money anymore, he had no choice but to change jobs. As for my father-in-law, now that his ex-wife was no longer in the family house, he decided to come back from his business trip in order to protect the house. And now he's living there happily. My husband and I go over to visit him every now and then, and he's always very happy to see us. Whenever he eats the food that I make, he says,
This is so delicious!
And he would eat with tears in his eyes. The pain from being betrayed by his wife that he had supported for all these years seemed quite deep. But my husband and I did our best to support him. And little by little, we spent time together. He started to smile again. Our relationship with Thomas's father became even better than when my mother-in-law was around. And I no longer hated going to their family house. From now on, I want to support my father-in-law together with my husband with everything that I can.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.